Welcome to the 6th Art Online Wikia Podcast. This is gonna be our Anime Japan roundtable for the next SAO progressive movie, Scherzo of Deep Night, the Floor 5 story, where we'll share our hopes, expectations, and opinions about the upcoming feature film coming out in fall 2022. Very similar to last year's Aria Starless Night podcast, I, Gamerturk, will be your host, and I got some guests here to accompany me and share their takes, starting with the SAO Wikia overlord, Dr. Gsimenas, who is also fan translating the Scherzo manga that is coming out officially on Twitter. Hey there, Gsimenas.
Heya.
We have an esteemed member of the SAO Wikia community and the editor for the Polish translation of SAO novels, Valgaaf.
Hello everyone.
And we have Siggy here, that you'll most likely recognize from Twitter as our staff and Sakuga enthusiast, who may also come and punch you if you have Bonk Cloud takes. Hi there, Siggy.
Hey, what up?
The program for today is similar to the last year's Aria podcast. We'll first issue a spoiler warning. This is it, by the way. This is the spoiler warning. We'll talk a lot about stuff about the contents of Floor 5, Scherzo of Deep Night, and then brief you a bit about the announcements at Anime Japan. We'll provide you a light intro into the Scherzo story and follow that up with a variety of questions and answers, like how we feel about the jump to Floor 5, whether we expect a lot of movie original changes, Argo's arrival, and lack of Mito in promos and so far, our most expected scene from the Scherzo movie, of course, and a little bit more. Of course, if you're interested in specific content, timestamps will be in the description, and you can also use the chapters feature to jump around. With that out there, let's have a brief overview of our Anime Japan news. Anyone up for it, actually? Because no one highlighted anything in the agenda regarding what we had in Anime Japan?
We didn't really get much about Scherzo from Anime Japan after all.
Like, at least from the top of my head, like we got Variant Showdown, which is a new mobile gacha game, right?
We don't know if it's gacha game, but it'll probably be that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Most likely, definitely.
we got like a brief snippet of Scherzo content, even though it's like, well, yeah, we'll get into that later.
Yeah, probably, yes. The preview without any actual Floor 5.
Yeah,
preview,
exactly
yes.
that. As part of like what do we call it, like a looking back preview that we got, like 2 minutes and a half.
The 10th anniversary, the animation anniversary, that is a bit more in-depth than what a non-Japanese person would recognize, probably. We translated it. Gsimenas, what did we have there?
We had an overview of the various announcements that were recently released, like the anime Aria movie getting a Blu-ray release, some live event on SEO's release date in lore.
And we still don't know what that one exactly is going to entail, right? They just have a stream or something with all the literally all the voice actors.
Yeah, just all the voice actors with no real details on that.
Well, they better have something good from it. We also had some art exhibition in Japan in a museum or something for an entire month.
Yeah, it's basically various character designs, scenes, and so on. Just various anime material that's going to be put on in exhibition in Ueno.
That would be nice to have if it wasn't Japan exclusive. But does that cover all more or less?
More or less, I think. You mentioned the Aria Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think that was the next biggest news anyways.
Pretty much.
So we can just...
At least that we care about.
Yeah. I mean, I am excited about the game, to be honest. But we'll learn more about that tomorrow. We're recording this on April 1st. Now, we need an intro for Scherzo of Deep Night. Just a very brief overview of what we're supposed to expect in the story. I'm just gonna give that to you, Gsimenas, because you are our walking encyclopedia.
Well, Scherzo is basically a self-contained story that focuses on 4-5, and it basically skims over the Elf campaign quest that takes place between Floors 3 and up to Floor 9, and instead focuses on the machinations of Proto-Laughing Coffin members and a huge boss battle, some interesting mechanics. Instead of the usual full floor boss raid, we get a much smaller party trying to not only defeat the boss, but also save the frontliners from collapsing on themselves.
That is actually one of the most interesting things I love about this boss floor, to be honest. Like, you usually have these full raid parties just going in with, how much was it, 48 people for a full raid? And here we just have like 24 people, not even that, just going in. And people usually forget because of the death game aspect, you know? People usually try to be too safe, but you can actually clear these with much smaller parties, realistically, if you throw out the safety. But I guess that's an entirely different topic. We may even talk about it. I don't know. Maybe we'll sneak it somewhere. But yeah, as you said, Scherzo is the floor 5 story. How are we feeling about the jump from floor 1 to 5? Because, as you probably all know, that is a heated topic on the internet.
So I could go first since I started out. I can see some reason to skipping to floor 5 because it is self-contained, as I said. So it's a more safer bet to start on it when progressive isn't complete yet. Well, the elf campaign specifically. And it'll probably take another year or two at Kawahara's current pace. So I can see some logic to skipping the multi-floor story and instead going for the self-contained story that they can cover in a single movie. But I'm also very skeptical about it in the sense that they're also skipped Rondo for no reason, and Aria didn't introduce some of the characters that will be present in Scherzo.
Well, some of the characters, that is just Argo, isn't it?
Well, other floors introduced other characters that will also take part, even though they didn't take a major part in the game till Scherzo. It would be still nice to see them before coming in for an all-star reunion on a boss battle.
Right, I was just pointing out because you said Aria specifically in that point. How about the others, Siggy?
Well, like, we've talked about this a lot, you and me, and, like, I'm still not a fan of the concept, just right off the bat. Like, I'd rather just keep it in the chronological order, the way it was written. But I do understand the reasoning given, and I think it does have some merits. I'm not sure that it'll turn out beneficial in the long run, but I'm willing to stick out and see how it goes. Especially since those are just the cards we've been given right now. It's not like I have any influence on the matter regardless.
On that note, I find it funny that the anime used to be the one that made the story more chronological. Now it's the one breaking chronology, and novel is being the one chronological.
Right. But then again, the fact that they turned it chronological, that just came with a whole lot of backlash in the long run, saying, oh, why are we constantly jumping floors? You know, people don't realize the story was literally floors 74 and 75. But that's an entirely different matter. Val, we have talked a lot about that with you as well. How are you feeling? Specifically maybe about the Rondo, skipping the Rondo part.
Actually, let me just say that my first impression about the whole skipping everything up to floor 5 just left me confusion, but I believe everybody in our community felt like that. But as already Gsimenas and Siggy said, and after Reki's explanation about that Elf campaign is not yet fully written, so maybe it would be better to skip to the floor 5. So yeah, actually I believe that might be a better idea, but I also agree with Siggy that it may not pay very well in future. I don't know, we'll see. And as for the Rondo, I don't believe only the Rondo is enough for a movie itself. For me, it could be, I don't know, an anime of 3 or 4 episodes or a series or overs, something like that, but not a movie because it doesn't give me this a standalone story thing like Aria did and like Scherzo, I believe, will do in the next movie.
The Rondo surely feels a lot more streamlined than all the other stories in my opinion as well, so I was actually gonna mention something else, but I completely forgot what it was. Oh right, I was gonna talk about, a lot of us were in confusion after the initial announcement. We were following our Japanese members in the Wikia server, and we just heard, I think it was Yuki, that came out and said Scherzo of Dark Dusk, and we're like, oh my god, what is happening? Are you sure? What was that really what it said? And we literally waited like half an hour to an hour before tweeting it as a confirmed information. That was we did consider reopening our panic room.
Yes, the server was really burning back there. I remember it clearly.
Yeah, good times. But yeah, we talked a bit about the boss fight. Wait, no, we're not there yet. No. First off, more importantly, Val, you mentioned how we had a much bigger area, etc. Let's bring it over here and ask whether we expect massive changes in Scherzo movie. As those of you who watched Aria know, we basically had half the movie as movie original, And the second half, well, it was, I'm gonna say faithful with an asterisk, but it was, instead of Kirito's perspective, completely from Asuna's perspective, which led to even more changes in portrayal. Do we expect anything like that in the Scherzo movie?
Well, right now, of course, I'm only speaking about my feelings here, but I believe there won't be any massive changes. Certainly not the extent of what we had in Aria. And one of the reasons would be is that Aria was much more flexible for that, because it was, first of all, it was the opening history for the entire progressive, but more, when Kawahara was writing Aria, he didn't have this concept of entire series for it. And while he was actually already writing Scherzo, it was already a thing, a series, a light novel series. And what is more, in Scherzo we have already I would say a solidified story, something that already exists and is using past events as a consequence for what is happening. So I believe Scherzo won't have any major changes.
See, I actually agree with that, but not for exactly the same reason. It's, from my opinion, it's quite simple actually. Because Aria had the wiggle room to add a lot of stuff, mainly because it's such a short story.
And it has a 3 weeks opening, right?
That as well. I mean, but mainly just in terms of we're talking about a movie adaptation. It's Aria is roughly around 100 pages as far as I remember, 120-ish. While Scherzo is, well, basically twice as long, if not more. It's a 250 or something.
By the way, just to warn you, people have pointed out that the correct pronunciation is Scherzo, and I have been corrected a lot in my own comments. Just know that people will attack you for it down below.
It'll be fine. Scherzo, you said, right?
Yes.
Alright, yeah, sure. In terms of page lengths, it's basically twice as long as Aria. So if they're attempting, if they're gonna fit it into, let's say, a regular movie runtime, Aria wasn't that long of a movie. It was an hour and 30 minutes, as far as I remember. I think it was 97 minutes.
97 full runtime with the credits, yeah.
Yeah, so an hour and a half probably. Scherzo could probably go up to 2 hours, and even then, there isn't really that kind of wiggle room to add a lot of content in there if they're going for a somewhat faithful adaptation.
Right. Gsimenas, I'm gonna come over to you, but I'm gonna flip that question on its head. What are the chances that Reki will change his own canon to make the movie stuff canon?
Well, he's personally said that he has been considering making Mito a character in the novel, but he doesn't really have a lot of wiggle room with her, since the story's already developed a lot, and pushing her in now would feel very forced. So she might become canon, but won't be necessarily the same girl as in the movie. She might have a different background, or how her story developed inside the game itself. But knowing Reki, I'm not sure if he'll even have the time to add original characters from movies. He didn't really add much of Eiji or Yuna from ordinal scale aside from side stories, after all.
That's the biggest wasted potential. I really wanted them in United Ring. We talked about that a lot in the United Ring podcast as well. But adding on to that, what if we assume Mito is now completely out of the front lines, and the movies just continue when going back to Rondo and onwards, with her becoming very much a background character? Then maybe something like a big event, Floor 10 maybe, she can be introduced without having to change much, huh?
Possible, but
I mean, never put Reki on Kawahara. He's done dumber things, but
but he isn't known for subtleties, so I'm not sure if it's gonna work out like that.
No, he's not.
I agree that the idea you just said is possible, but I don't really think that Reki is going to force Mito into canon, no matter how close it is to her movie appearance or not. I just can't see it.
Small objection there. It is not Reki who decides shoehorning these characters, We need to consider Miki as well on that topic.
Well, yeah, of course, that's right, but I believe we are, going too much into speculation field right now that actually won't bring us to anything conclusive. So I don't know. I just don't see it.
I'll still keep the idea in my shit posts that I send to Siggy every once in a while.
Yeah, something like remind me 8 years, whatever the fuck you said.
I'll probably post a screenshot of it in this one.
Are you okay with the swearing in this, or should I like not do it?
Keep it a Christian channel, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, as I said, Mickey failed to make Eiji and Yuna relevant so far post Alicization, so I'm not sure if Mickey's pushing that much for anime original character integration into the canon.
But going back to our initial topic, changes to Scherzo movie, do you think we're gonna stick to the Asuna-specific perspective that we had in Aria compared to the actual point of view of Aria of a Starless Night? Because in Scherzo, we already have like a 50-50 split, more or less. Asuna really has a lot of screen time, so do you think we'll just get full-on Asuna perspective, or are we gonna switch to the original light novel ones? What do you think?
Well, in Aria, Asuna was the main character just to give the movie a fresh spin, because it's basically adapting the same story that was covered in episode 2 of the original anime. For Scherzo, it has a 50-50 split between points of view in the novel itself, so they could just go run with that, or they could maintain consistency and just do Asuna, because that's what the mangas are trying to do, although not exactly always succeeding, since eventually they still give Kirito a much bigger role than was originally implied.
But compared to Aria, do you think it will be significantly easier to just go with a full-on Asuna perspective without having to cut an actual plot line and heel blade?
And I still believe that even though in Scherzo there are a lot of scenes with Asuna's perspective, there are still some scenes important to the plot from Kirito's point of view, and I agree with Gsimenas here that keeping this 50-50 ratio and thus being faithful to light novel would be the most beneficial for the movie.
I think personally that it's probably not going to be the same kind of Asuna focus that we saw in the Aria movie. Mainly just because, unlike Aria, they're not adding like this big focus on her from the get-go. Like, basically Aria adds an entire origin story for her. That's
right.
More or less what it does. That doesn't exist in Scherzo, and if we're going off the assumption that it's gonna follow the light novel, at least, somewhat, it's going to be a relatively faithful adaptation. There's not really that much, like, they're not going to add stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And there isn't really space for it. And unlike Aria, they basically spend most of the, I was going to say runtime of the novel, but that doesn't make much sense. But most of it is just the two of them together anyway. So, like, a perspective shift doesn't really make that much of a difference. Because
right,
it's not
because
like the
we're not getting inner monologues anyway.
Exactly, the movie is not going to adapt inner monologues regardless. So, like, in all of the scenes that are together, which is the majority of the novel, I want to say.
Yeah, more or less, Aside from the scenes where the point is that
there are
they
a few
are
ones.
separated, yeah.
There's a few scenes where they're separated, but for the majority of the movie, they're together, and there's not going to be a difference in perspective there, because it's not like the movie is going to take you inside the head of the character regardless.
Oh, just to mention this, because I think I forgot to mention this at the beginning, two of us, me and Siggy, have actually watched Aria, whereas Gsimenas and Valgaaf are basically just non-Aria watchers at this point, due to their countries never having the releases. So keep that in mind. We basically have two separate perspectives on how much we actually trust this staff. Of course, they have heard our opinions and stuff, but, that's, I think, a decent disclaimer to have here. Should have been earlier, but yeah.
Better late than never.
But I'm really excited to see more of Kirito from the perspective of the competency of this staff. So that's gonna be lovely to have more of him on the screen.
I mean, I can just gush about that like all day. I adore it.
Sorry guys,
so
we kind of left you out there, but we have watched the movie.
It must feel very great to live in Central Europe.
I mean, I did watch it in Turkey. That wouldn't be exactly Central Europe, but okay.
I'm not sure Denmark is Central Europe either. By like any definition, but you.
I'm pretty sure you are more Central Europe than me and Siggy both.
By definition.
Yeah, I believe that Poland is also theoretically speaking, considered Central Europe, but still we don't have.
Are you actually considered Central Europe?
Yeah.
Interesting.
This has been Gamerturk Geographic Channel.
I'm far away from Europe enough. Anyways, moving on. Going over to our floor boss, Fuscus, the Vacant Colossus. Or is it Fuscus? I don't know, I didn't read the kana, but how do you feel about the design changes? We had this with Ilfang over to Chadfang as well, and we had the Vacant Colossus, who is now the, Colossal Titan or something? How do you feel about
Colossus.
it? Chadlossus, yeah.
I mean, I think it's great. They made him like more lean and less chunky, which is basically the same approach that Ilfang got.
Exactly, like making them much more scarier and intense, you get that feeling that people will really be spooked by fighting it.
Yeah, and I assume that it's probably going to be a thing going forward, assuming we stay with the same one, like the same action director / monster designer.
I mean, we saw the water horsey, the white HD hippocampus. That was relatively the same, but I think it was a cool design in the original anyway. So
yeah, well, I'm just saying it's the same staff, so it makes sense.
I'm neutral on it.
Well, actually, when I saw the poster with Fuscus, I really like it. I thought that it is really menacing, but also cool. And yeah, as Siggy said, it seems that they're going with this chatback approach for this boss as well. So I think it is a really good thing because it gives you this vibe that actually it is an actual dev game. Yeah, so stakes are really high. So yeah, I think that's really a good thing to have Fuscus buffed as well.
I'll wait until the movie to be the judge of it, because
so you're like waiting 2 more years for it then.
Yeah, probably.
8 months, guys. 8 months. 3 months.
Not for me.
You can buy the Blu-ray.
The Blu-ray of Scherzo is coming next year in a couple months.
Oh! I thought for some reason you were talking about the Ilfang redesign.
Yeah.
My brain just blanked out. I'm sorry.
Siggy. Good job.
I'm sorry.
But we spoke about the White HD Hippocampus. That's a terrible name to pronounce. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
PS is not Vipage, it's whiskey.
What?
Really?
I am not even gonna open that can of worms. You get
Okay, let's stick with the horsey.
Okay, yes, water horsey. We have seen the water horsey in the trailer. In fact, what we saw in the trailer had nothing to do with Floor 5 at all. Not that non-light novel readers probably realized, but we saw scenes from very likely to be Floor 3, but has issues to be confirmed about that. And we saw the Floor 4 boss, the water horsey. Yes, that one. So it's very clear we are getting some flashbacks for content that is currently being skipped over. What do we expect from these flashbacks? How extensive are they gonna be? Are we gonna get maybe some L4 teasers here and there? Because we had a scene, but we didn't see anything yet. Maybe they hid it like the Marvel style in the trailers. Who knows? But how far do you think the flashbacks will go?
I'm gonna make a guess and say that it's probably pretty extensive. Like, I'm not expecting like a 30-second montage, Sakaria style.
Please don't remind me of that.
Just based off like the content that they showed. Like, if it was just the boss, I would think, oh yeah, this is just gonna be like a hype thing they're gonna show for like, I don't know, a minute or two, and then that's that. To like, hey, we did this. This is what happened. But they're also showing like scenes from, well, what seems like much slower set pieces that wouldn't really fit a montage like that.
Just to remind you, the Zakaria flashback that you reminded me of, thank you very much for that, bad memories, also had a lot of tournament scenes, and then also had Telene and Telur and the farm, the Valgaaf farm.
Oh yeah, it did. Never mind, actually, just disregard everything I just said.
Perfect. What about the others?
Actually, as much as I'd like to agree with Siggy that flashbacks might be quite extensive, and they can be used as kind of introduction for things that happens during skipped floors, but are quite relevant in the Scherzo, which for example would be Argo or Laughing Coffin or PvP things happening. However, maybe I am overacting right now, but I am afraid that if we would have those flashbacks of skip floors in these extensive flashbacks, maybe that would mean that they're not interested in making actual adaptations of the floors. I don't know, maybe just me speaking.
I'm personally thinking that it's an indication that they're gonna try and do the other skip floors in anime format instead of movie format. Maybe.
That is a scary thought right there. Siggy and I are fuming right now.
Okay, but to be honest, you would rather have skip floors not adapted at all, or in TV series, in anime series. So let's be honest. If we want to have anything, I would take a TV series 100%.
You know, that is always a tough question. You know, you ask that, and I don't want to feel as devastated as I was in the second core of Alicization. I'll be perfectly honest.
Is it your revenge for Zakaria that you are now speaking of this forbidden topic?
Zakaria was the first core. The first core was relatively tolerable.
Still had
Second
hope
core
back
was a
then.
disaster.
And fourth core.
See, that's the beauty of what happened right there, because you need to have hope before there can be true despair.
Like, I will be perfectly fine switching into an anime adaptation if we're keeping the same competent staff. I don't want to say anything negative about the staff. You know, when you say staff, it's too much of a blanket statement. But Ono did not work.
Don't mention that name here.
He's not the director act for
If you say it
no
3
reason.
times, you'll summon him.
The one who need not be mentioned by name, or whatever the thing was in Harry Potter.
I'm also kind of like, I don't want to put it all on one person, even if he was the director, because that's just not how things work. Like, it's just a collection of bad decisions.
Yeah, that just spiraled out of control completely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that I don't believe that using Alicization, but mostly second core, and its disaster, you're using it as something that could also happen to potential TV series of skipped floors, because Alicization was much bigger, much grander, and there were a lot of subplots. And to be honest, compared to that, Progressive is much more simple and linear story. So I don't think that potential TV series would have high chance to be a disaster like Alicization.
You can't say that, but when we enter the Elf War territory, that's like that's a 6-floor huge saga.
Yeah, but still not. It doesn't compare with
Alicization flashbacks.
I think we need to get ourselves out of this question. That is not going in a good direction.
Maybe it's time to talk about the most important thing, or other person.
I could go over to Argo, but I feel like I missed something. Oh right, I forgot to mention my own thoughts and my ideal scenario for how flashbacks and teases, etc. could follow. As you all know, as fellow light novel readers, we're all on the cultured side of things here. Reki himself has a shit ton of flashbacks every single time. A character appears for the first time in a book, we should probably remember where we first met them. We're going into a boss fight. Remember what happened last boss fight. So I feel like the best way to go about these flashbacks is not have a 5-minute flashback block somewhere in the movie, but rather do the exact same thing that the books do, just fine, Just wherever that flashback is supposed to fit, just give us a 15-20 second clip. I think that would work perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'd prefer that they do the flashbacks in this way, spreading them out where they're relevant instead of just dumping them at the very beginning and boring the audience.
Exactly. Like, make it flow naturally with the story. There's no reason to cover 3 floors in a 4-minute flashback sequence.
So what you're saying you don't want is like an Ono PowerPoint presentation.
Siggy, you're just...
He's not.
Sorry, I can't help it. The memes are too good.
I took a sword in my heart, like that trailer suggested. Thank you. Next question. Now we're moving to what you wanted to talk about, Val. Argo is here. How do you feel about her introduction now being in Floor 5? That actually ties perfectly well with the previous suggestions I have provided. Do you think the jump will be a problem with the familiarity of her character? Because, we skipped floors 2 to 5 actually. not including 5. I am tired, because while Argo is a supporting character in Aria that barely appeared, people just overplay her appearance in Aria, where she has
because they read the manga, probably.
Probably, yes. But from Asuna's perspective, she appears for like 10 seconds in a PTSD-inducing scene. But starting onwards, even before Rondo of a Fragile Blade, the second floor, we get the reason for the whiskers, and then over the course of the floors, Argo starts becoming more and more of an actual main character than a supporting character. And this movie reflects that as well, with Argo being that third prominent character appearing on the poster with the voice actors. So do you think it'll be a problem that we're jumping straight to floor 5 rather than her natural progression into a main character?
Personally, love it if they did Whiskers as an OVA before the movies are released, just to hype the movie and introduce one of the main characters without just dumping her in without context.
She was kind of dumped in United Ring without any context, if you ask me, as if Reki remembered she exists as a character, but that is a massive tangent.
Personally, I don't think that it'll cause that big of a problem, at least not due to the skip. Mainly because, she wasn't giving that, due to the movie, the Aria movie being adapted like it was, Argo wasn't really given an introduction in Aria. So, now so even if they were doing Rondo next, they would have to do let's call it the movie original character introduction. They would have to do that regardless of the floor skip. So maybe she'll be dumped in without context, or maybe they'll do something. It could be something really short, like Kirito just mentioning, or even introducing her to Asuna. That would just do the trick. Done.
To be frank, I feel like Argo has enough of a vibrant personality that people will instantly get who she is.
Yeah, it would work regardless. It's not a big deal. It's not like she needs a setup.
And while I agree with both of you, I also believe that it might be a chance that those flashbacks we spoke of a little bit might be used a part of them to introduce, for example, Argo.
And even injected to certain scenes in Aria that we didn't get to see because we were following Asuna's perspective. Maybe a walk towards the Tolbana town from Kirito's perspective. Huh?
Yeah, exactly, things like that.
But I feel like we're just going into wishful thinking territory right now.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, so, we don't expect much changes because there isn't wiggle room. In the case of changes suddenly appearing in the movie in ways that we never would have expected, how much do we trust the staff now compared to how much we trusted them a year ago before we watched the Aria movie? I know this is kind of throwing Val and Gsimenas completely out of the capabilities of answering this question, but Siggy, how much do you trust the staff in the case of potential changes?
Well, I trust them about as much as I did going into the Aria movie, which is a lot, just based on what we're seeing right now. Not right now, back then.
Going into the Aria
PVs.
movie, you say. Do you really want me to ask Gsimenas to unarchive the entire thread, please?
Okay, go. Shortly before the release, let's just put it that way. I think I was confident in it being good. Okay, let's just let's not dig up the archive. I might have said some things. It happens. My memory's blanked out. But I'm pretty confident in the staff doing a good job. As long as it's being headed by the same people, which it is.
Yep.
I think Ayaka Kono did a brilliant job with Aria, and I think even despite all of the changes that we saw, it is, in regards to this, let's call it the spirit of the series, it's the most faithful the anime has ever been.
Yep.
Despite not really following the storyline, it's not an accurate adaptation, but I would say it's very faithful to what the series is about.
I think the best way to put it is it showed that you don't need to have an accurate adaptation to have a good adaptation.
Yeah, I think what we saw in Aria is really just a showcase of this is a staff that knows what the series is about, and knows where the focus should be.
In Kirito being an absolute bumbling idiot.
Yeah, and it's brilliant, and I love it.
I'm gonna turn to you guys, Gsimenas and Val, because, Siggy and I are coming from that perspective. We have very solid opinions, whereas you probably you saw different opinions that show up in the SAO Wikia Discord. How is your feeling towards, if there are potential changes, how much would you trust the staff?
Well, as for me, I would say that it was... Well, first of all, when I first saw what Aria was about with those changes, I was really terrified and disappointed, but actually, through all our talks, a lot of happened, and right now I am in much different place, and I really believe I hope they did a good job in movie. Actually, I will know that once I will watch it, but I trust them really in the upcoming movie and future projects if there will be something like that. So I have no issue. I would say I have no reasons not to trust them.
I'll remain cautious about it since I don't really know how the Aria movie turned out, but I don't like them just cutting plot points that I was hoping that would finally get adapted. So
not cutting, it was due to the perspective change from being Asuna's perspective, but okay, don't let me stop you, just keep...
I mean, that's just semantics, like, from I want to say, like, I don't know, from a certain perspective, it did get cut. Because you didn't see it in the adaptation.
Technically, yes.
And did the movie improve on Diavel and his potion scene?
Oh, no, that did not happen, yes. That was the one complaint I had about the movie, keeping the potion scene as it was in the anime.
They got so many wins, there has to be some else somewhere.
But then again, I ask myself as well, I don't want to go into Aria too much for this, but, how do you convey that there was something between those two without having them physically interact, especially when you're adapting from a third person's perspective? I feel like the potion scene is better in the movie than it was in the anime from Kirito's perspective.
Yeah, because everything else around it is better and, not shit.
Well, not just because of that, but because, when you're adapting from Kirito's perspective, you can convey that connection by making them come eye to eye. But how do you show that from Asuna's perspective? You can't, so you have the potion scene. But that's Aria.
Doesn't change the fact that it's stupid.
It is still stupid, yes.
I'm kind of getting a feeling that we're using Asuna's perspective as an excuse that for cut or not adapted well things in Aria. But I didn't watch the movie, so I'm just speculating here.
I mean, it is literally the excuse if you go into that, because when you have script from a different perspective from a character that doesn't see certain things at all, it kinda happens. But again, DFL scene that.
Well.
Cut you off at some point, Gsimenas.
The manga of Progressive, the Himura one, was technically from Asuna's perspective, and they had no problem adapting non-Asuna plot points as well, even if it put a comedic spin on almost all of them.
I mean,
so
Himura has a lot of pluses as well, let's be perfectly honest.
Yeah, anyway, I see his take on the SAO getting flamed, pretty often. It used to happen fairly often, but, he got a lot of what the series is about right as well. There was some dumb shit and some goofy shit that I didn't like, but...
It was just a completely different genre. That's literally my only problem with Himura's manga.
His manga's fun.
And, my biggest problem with it that it just went original at the end of Rondo and then completely bonkers in Concerto.
Right, that happened as well. I always... For some reason, it's in my mind that it was the next manga that followed, but yeah, Himura did.
We don't talk about that manga at all. It didn't happen. It does not exist.
Well, Aincrad exists, so maybe we'll get a decent adaptation of Rondo and Concerto? Maybe?
The manga scene is just so confusing now with Aria Aincrad too. Someone needs to write up a proper timeline.
Leave it to Gsimenas.
That was actually a hint. We're working on it on the Wikia. We have some infrastructure work to do, but we will get to it to hopefully classify things properly to avoid confusions. Alright, so we touched upon this a little earlier. I forgot this was a question, so I did have Mito talks around the first question, but this is a little bit of a different aspect. We know it is gonna be a ragtag team going up against Fuscus to the Vacant Colossus. And do you think Mito is going to be part of that raid rush?
I'm pretty certain they'll throw her in just to appease the movie crowd.
I think it is possible, but I'm not 100% sure if it will happen or not. I believe we might have some cameo of her in the background, where like Kirito and Asuna walking through a town or doing some quest, but whether it will be during a boss fight, maybe, probably yes, but not 100% sure.
I think they'll keep her in the movie somehow, to some extent.
Let me ask you this way then. Do you think it would be a good addition if they add her to the boss raid crew? Because, you know, Kirito and Asuna are very desperate to find people that they trust.
But from my perspective, it will be how much it will change what we have in right now. Right now, I'm talking right now, the bias, but yeah, if she will be there just as a addition, not changing much, so yeah, I will be fine with that. But I'm not a fan of if once engaged they just shoehorn her and change half of fight so that we can have her there.
I mean, is there anything that can actually change in the boss fight? It's pretty straightforward.
I'm not sure, but I will just leave this little bit of doubt because I'm not 100% trusting them.
Right.
I think they kind of should keep her in the movies somehow, because she got introduced. She's a character now in the movies, at least. Her not showing up, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a bit of wasted potential.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they won't show her at all, because I believe, as you said, she's already an existing character and she has her background, so it would be totally, in my opinion, to not show her. But she certainly won't be as much important as she was in Aria. Well, it is obvious, but I believe she should be just a minor character with 2 cameos and maybe something during the boss fight. That's all.
In Before, we just get a 5-minute flashback sequence where she is doing the L4 campaign with Kirito and Asuna together. 3 people, yay!
Let's hope that won't be the case.
The silence was very clear about the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Mito. I think she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her character. I prefer it personally if she wasn't in it, but I think the way they're setting it up now with the movies and the way Aria panned, I think it would turn out for the better if they didn't include her, despite my personal opinion on the matter.
Didn't include her where? In the boss fight?
They did include her, I think.
Oh, they did, okay. Okay, we're approaching the 1 hour mark, so I'm moving over to the final question that we have. The one scene you are looking forward to the most in Scherzo of Deep Night movie, provided it's gonna be actually in the movie, because we had some expectations last time and they were mostly not in the movie.
Well, I can start, since nobody seems eager.
We're just scared. We do trust the staff, but we're scared.
I'm pretty confident this will be in. It's the final scene of the movie with the.
Oh, that was my pick. Okay.
Yeah. Get wrecked. Well, yeah, that's my pick, and it's a pretty iconic scene, so I'm fairly confident it'll be in the movie.
I will just play safe, and I will say I want to see that scene of Asuna, and I will leave to your interpretation whatever I mean.
You guys are gonna need to be a bit more clear. We did have a spoiler warning. I'm fine with keeping it safe, but that is a bit too vague if I don't even understand
what you're talking about.
That one scene with Asuna, yes, there's a lot of them.
Yes.
Okay, so
chooses to elaborate.
If you're forcing me so much, it will be Asuna. It will be Asuna first actual duel in a specific setting with a certain character.
Right. Okay, that's clear enough.
I was expecting him to mention the hand-holding scene. To be honest,
that's too much for him.
I'm embarrassed to say it, but yeah, we all know what would be my real answer. Yeah.
Anyways, I stole your thunder, Kant, but what is yours?
Gsimenas first, please.
I'm probably most interested in the Asuna point of view scene where she goes down into the catacombs and how their meeting with the Laughing Coffin will turn out.
Oh, that is actually a good scene, knowing the contents of Aria as well. Siggy probably knows which specific mob I am talking about. You guys probably do as well. You know the screenshots, but...
Yeah. Should I mention it?
I think that's good enough. I mentioned in my review. People can watch it. Kind of a self-promo. Mine is also the final scene, and it has already been mentioned in War of Underworld. So they cannot cut it out. It's there. It's part of the anime. They will need to capitalize on it. So I am like 150% sure we are gonna get that epic introduction, let's say.
That's a good pick as well. Very good.
But yeah, that was it from this lengthy podcast. Hopefully I will be able to publish this within a week. We'll see, university is killing me, but I'm glad we had this scheduled. Hopefully next year we will have our Rondo movie and we will be in a much more cheerful mood rather than hopefully expecting something to happen. And hopefully Celest will be there as well, because we had terrible scheduling issues at this point. It was already hard getting this many people in. But thank you very much to all of you for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
It's actually pretty fun.
Oh, it is usually fun to talk about things, you know, shitpost every once in a while. But yeah, we'll see you guys in a year. Bye bye, have fun, stay cool.
Probably.